What's up, guys? It's Election Predictions 2020 with my third video. And I've really liked doing these videos, and I've seemed to have a pretty good reaction so far. So I'm going to start doing these videos regularly every Monday and Thursday. So be on the lookout on Thursday for a new video. And for today, instead of me doing what I think is going to happen in the 2020 election, making my own predictions, I'm going to use a gambling site where people just like you and me can gamble their own money based on how they think um, a political or what the political outcome is going to be. And so I'm going to go state by state. I'm only going to look at these six states: Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida, because that's what the 2020 consensus map. That's what this website, 270 to win, thinks are the toss-up states that do not lean one way or the other. So I'm going to fill in these states, and after we fill in these states, we'll have a winner of the election. And I'm just going to do generic Democrat versus generic Republican, even though it will most likely be Biden versus Trump because that's how the website does it. So the most popular website for politics gambling is Predictit. And just some history on Predictit. It was made before the 2016 election. It got really popular during the 2016 elections. A lot of media outlets are really interested in it to kind of see on a daily basis what the markets were looking like. It is called a prediction market website. It's made in New Zealand because when it was made, gambling on politics was not legal in the United States. It's a little bit of a clunky website. There's a lot of fees involved with it. So it's not a perfectly free market. The volume isn't very high. So it can be it can be hard to buy and sell shares. But basically how it works is you can like buy a share, like for example, for Trump to be reelected in 2020. I think the share is sitting around 49 cents right now. So you can buy that for 49 cents. Then if he does win, you can cash out for $1. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to combine these two sites, and we're going to make an election prediction in 2020. So I'm going to start with the state of Florida. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look up Florida, and let's see what it has here. So like I said here, Democrat, Republican, which party will win Florida in the 2020 presidential election? This isn't Trump versus Biden, which I think is important, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. But as you can see here, the Republicans have a very narrow advantage here. So because the Republican share price is more expensive than the Democratic share price. And I think Florida is going to be close, but I do think that this prediction market has Florida a little closer than it should be. I think the Republicans have a stronger advantage than a 3-cent margin. And if you look at the 90-day forecast, in the past, it seems like the Republican nominee has had a stronger advantage. But recently, and I think this coincides pretty well to when the coronavirus outbreak hit. So I think what this prediction market, the change here, this like 20-cent drop is a reflection of people thinking that the coronavirus outbreak is going to have a large impact on the 2020 election. Maybe some people think that Florida swing voters are not happy with President Trump's handling of the coronavirus outbreak. I know Florida has been one of the states that's been hardest hit by the coronavirus outbreak, so I think that will be a huge factor in how the people of Florida vote. I would expect this to the red line to go up a little bit closer to the election, because I really do think that structurally, because a lot of older people are moving to Florida, and especially after how it did in the 2018 election, I expect this advantage to get stronger. So we're going to put Florida in the tilt Republican column because that's what it had on here. Next up, we're going to go to Michigan, and I already have some guesses on what Michigan is going to be like. Okay, this doesn't surprise me that much. I think Michigan is the state that Donald Trump is most vulnerable in out of the states that he won in 2016. I mean, he won very narrowly here. And let's just see how it has been in the last 90 days. So actually, on February 21st, the Republicans did have an advantage to take this state in the presidential election. So if I did this video back then it would be Republican. But I think this makes sense. I think that 2016 could be a fluke for the state of Michigan. I think typically it leans Democratic. I think that the Democrats are really going to target those urban areas like Detroit and Flint and have their mobilization team just really going there. They're going to pour a lot of money into Michigan. If you remember in 2016, Hillary Clinton didn't even go to Michigan. But Joe Biden is going to go to Michigan because they have learned their lesson. Or, I mean, maybe they haven't learned their lesson. Maybe Donald Trump will win there again, but we'll see. So next up, we're going to go to the state of Pennsylvania. And so Pennsylvania is closer than Michigan, but this doesn't necessarily surprise me either. It's about a 20-cent margin, and if you look over the past 90 days, similar type trends. So it seems in mid February, the Republican, which is Donald Trump, had a higher likelihood according to the predicted users. And I will say the predicted users are not necessarily political science experts. They're just random people like you and me. I have an account on Predicted. I do some gambling here and there. I think I have a pretty good grasp on politics, but a lot of these predictions can be dictated by mob mentality and just like the news cycle. So it's not necessarily going to be super accurate. I mean, the polls in 2016 in the prediction markets had Hillary Clinton winning by a lot. And the prediction markets were like 80, 90, 95% towards Hillary Clinton. So they were very wrong. But this doesn't surprise me. And the general trend among all these states is it seems like since the coronavirus, people think that politically, which I mean, I hate to even talk about the coronavirus in political terms, but it has helped Joe Biden and hurt Donald Trump. But who really knows? I mean, we're still in the middle of this thing, and not very many polls have taken place since the coronavirus outbreak. So next up, let's go to North Carolina. If the Democrats win any of these three states, then they win the election. So because they're at 268, the magic number is 270. So let's go to North Carolina. I suspect this will go to the Republicans narrowly. Yes, yeah. So this is actually a little closer than I thought. I think Florida and North Carolina are states that are going to lean Republican, not even tilt Republican. But I mean, this website just has them barely, just by a 7-cent margin. So we're going to put this in the tilt Republican column, but I think North Carolina is probably going to go to Donald Trump just because, I mean, it's in the South. Donald Trump won this state by about 3.5 points in 2016. And I could maybe see it being more like a 2-point margin this time, but I definitely think having the Republican National Convention in Charlotte, there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm with the grassroots in North Carolina. And there's going to be a huge mobilization effort, especially with the Senate race. That's going to be a very competitive Senate race between Thom Tillis and Cal Cunningham. So next up, I'm gonna go to Wisconsin. I had Wisconsin in my projections going to the Republicans very narrowly. And we'll see what this website has it. So Predict It has Wisconsin going to the Democrats, and it's an even closer margin than Michigan and Pennsylvania, which makes sense because I think out of these three Rust Belt states that were supposed to be Hillary Clinton's blue wall in 2016, that obviously wasn't the case. Wisconsin is the most favorable to the Republicans. Um, Over the past 90 days, I mean, you can see it goes like month by month. It kind of changes up. And I honestly think if not for the coronavirus outbreak, that Predict It might have the Republican nominee for president, who will most likely be Donald Trump, winning in Wisconsin and maybe even Pennsylvania too. So you can see like right March 4th, March 5th is kind of when it shifted. But I still think Donald Trump's going to win Wisconsin. I mean, Scott Walker barely lost Wisconsin in 2018. But this puts Joe Biden over the edge if he's the Democratic nominee, which he most likely will be. And just to see, let's see what Arizona is going to be, because in this projection, it doesn't even matter. But wow, so Arizona's just like Florida. It's really close, but unlike Florida, they have the Democratic nominee for president with a very narrow margin. And wow, this is one that's actually before March, before the coronavirus outbreak, it was pretty solidly Republican. I guess that's what the majority of Predict It users thought. So this is the final tally, and actually, I saw this earlier. The one district in Nebraska they have leaning towards the Democrats on the Predict It model. So wow, this has the Democratic nominee for president beating the Republican nominee for president 290 to 248. And the next thing I want to look at on the Predict It website is just two more things. So what is interesting is if we look at the Electoral College and we do a state by state breakdown, it says that the Democrat has an advantage. If we look at just Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the overall market on who will win the 2020 U.S. presidential election, it has Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by a 5-cent margin. So how I like to interpret this is like 48% or like there's a 48% chance that Donald Trump will win re-election. There's a 43% chance that Joe Biden will be our next president. And so I think why it is this case and why these don't add up to 100 is because I think there's still some hope in the Democratic Party that someone's going to come in to save the day and replace Joe Biden, because he's not a very good candidate. He's not charismatic. He's old. And I think some people think that like Andrew Cuomo might come in, or like I saw this article in the Washington Post. They want former President Obama to like come in and be like, we need Andrew Cuomo instead of Joe Biden. Some people still have hope that Bernie Sanders might pull a comeback from behind victory, but I really think it's going to be Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And I really do think when you put Joe Biden and Donald Trump face to face rather than generic Republican versus generic Democrat, Donald Trump actually does better because Joe Biden is such a weak candidate. I think he's very vulnerable, and I think that he performs more poorly than just the generic Democrat. Because when you think generic Democrat, you think Obama, you think Bill Clinton, and those guys are a lot more charismatic and just have better political instincts than Joe Biden. So next up, I want to go to which party wins the presidency in 2020. And this is really interesting. I mean, it's basically 50-50. And even though Donald Trump has a 5% advantage in the other, um, when we're looking at the candidates themselves, I think what this represents is that there's still a glimmer of hope that someone's going to replace Joe Biden, even though, in my opinion, that's definitely not going to happen. But I mean, this is really as close as it can get. I mean, we're still 6 months away from the election, but I mean, you can see it's just going back and forth and back and forth. I think this probably represents when the coronavirus hit, and now it's kind of evening up a little bit more. But I mean, this election is really going to be one of the closest in political history. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is just to show how much the Electoral College matters. I saw this earlier. Okay, yeah. So the popular vote, and the popular vote literally doesn't matter. And as you can see, Donald Trump does not have a very great chance of winning the popular vote in 2020. I would even put his chances at lower than 32% chance, but it really doesn't matter. Some people say that Donald Trump has hacked the electoral college, where he can win the states that matter. And I mean, I think it would be hard for Republicans to win the popular vote going forward, just because Democrats just rack up votes in California and New York. And I'm a big proponent of the Electoral College. I want to see it stay. I think it's more fair, and I think it prevents voter fraud. But it honestly just goes to show that the popular vote, and even the popular vote polls, you see these polls, it's like Biden's up by 10. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the Electoral College is what matters. Um, and just some other things. This is another website, Bovada. It's an American website that does some uh, political betting. And I think as of 2018, the Supreme Court has laxed some rules on betting on politics in the U.S. I don't know all the details. Um, and if you know some other websites about betting on political elections, please drop it in the comments below. I'd be very interested in that. And lastly, this is one of the only websites that I've found that actually fills in all of the states. A lot of websites that I see, like they have an electoral map, but then they leave like 6 or 7 states blank because they're the toss-up states. And it really is, it's not very helpful. It's, if you want to know who's going to win the election, those maps are helpful because none of them go to 270. And this map's a little confusing. The blue states are actually Republicans, the red states are Democrats. And they have the Republicans at 270 and the Democrats at 260. And I mean, this is truly, the 2020 election is going to be one of the closest in American history. I think it's going to be like the 2000 Bush v. Gore election. It's going to be that close. And this website says that the one state that's going to determine it, like the tipping point state, is Wisconsin. They only have like a R is greater than 30%. Now, I don't know about all the data in here, but basically they have the least amount of confidence in Wisconsin, which is really interesting because I think like Arizona could be in the same category, but we'll see. All right, so just a quick overview. Just I want to put everything in one spot. The electoral college numbers, the predicted market has the Democrats winning, but then when you look at the 2020 presidential winner, Trump has an advantage, but then when you look at the 2020 presidential party winner, it's the Democrats. So it's a little clunky, but I think this just goes to show how close the election is going to be. And then I didn't really show you this, but the Bovada actually has it the opposite. So they have the Republicans having a 56% chance of winning the election. It's not perfect because I translated the betting odds to percentages, and the reason why these don't add up to 100% is because Vegas always needs to take their share of the bets. But I found what's really interesting is Bovada actually gives Trump a larger advantage going into 2020. And this, I mean, in 2016, this would be unheard of. So I think that what this goes to show is that Trump is in a lot better place in 2020 than he was in 2016. And that doesn't mean that he's going to win the election in 2020. But I think that a lot of people in the Trump campaign are happy. They have a ton of money. The economy was good. I don't think people are going to blame Trump for the coronavirus because it really, I mean, it's a virus. It wasn't his fault. I mean, you can blame him for how he responded to it, but I don't think the economy tanking in the short run, people are going to blame Donald Trump for. I mean, I really just don't think that's very rational. And last, I just included the Real Clear Politics polling averages, the popular vote. And Trump is only down by 6 points. In 2016, at this point, he was down like 10 points to Hillary Clinton. The popular vote doesn't matter at all. People are obsessed with it in the media. But I just wanted to show you that because I think Trump's in a pretty good spot to win re-election in 2020, even though I think it's going to be the closest election. So, okay, that's the end of my video. I just want to say please like, subscribe, and share. And just drop any of your opinions in the comments. I would love to hear what y'all are thinking, and I would love to have feedback on my videos. I'm going to try out a few different things, but I would just love to hear what y'all are thinking. And a new video on Thursday. So, all right. Thanks, guys. See you